Yeah, so in this video what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip this, which is the BontraNger rapid drive hub. So as you can see, this one's got a Freehub, so it's the rear hub. Relatively simple really to do. First things first, you want to take these end caps off, which my hands are a little bit greasy. There we go, they should just pull off, and then once you've got the Freehub side off, the Freehub just slides off as well. And that's what that looks like. We'll sort that out later. And then you just got to pull that one off as well. If you do get stuck with it, because what happens is people grease up these caps, and I think sometimes it can affect the little O-ring. There's a little rubber ring in there, and it can make them swell up, and it makes them quite difficult to remove. You could potentially use a tool like this, which as you tighten it, expands. So that would sit inside the cap. You would just tighten that up. And then you can see it's not going to come outside of the cap, but just gives you enough to pull it off. I find sometimes the other way is just to try and hold the hub and the axle still, and just try and walk basically the cap left and right and pull at the same time, and then you might find that that works as well. It's a bit difficult with this one because of all the grease, and you're basically just kind of wobbling it as you go along. So then what you'll be left with is that, and you can see one bearing there, and there's one bearing on this side as well. So what you want to do is grab the cap, or any cap, it doesn't really matter which one, because we're going to hit this end and push this bearing out. What I've got is a hub support tool, and it just means that when I hammer something, this isn't resting on anything that's going to damage it, especially this face, because the disc goes there. You don't really want to damage that face because your disc could then go on wonky. So just keep that in mind. You need some way for this axle obviously to pass through and pass into that hole. So if we do it on the floor and we try and hit that, then the axle's got nowhere to go. So you need to kind of raise it up and have it so that you've got space for the axle to move underneath. So we're just going to hold that. You're probably going to have to hit it quite hard. Yeah, just don't be too worried about it. It's much better that you, if you do end up damaging something, that you damage this cap rather than the axle. And there's your quite disgusting bearing that somebody's put a load of grease on it. I did get this hub free with a rim that I bought on eBay, so can't really complain for that. And then what you're left with, if we can get this little bugger off again. What we're trying to do is push this axle out further. So I'm just going to stick the little cap on there. I should just be able to tap that through now. And then you can hear the sound change. You may be able to grab it. It's going to be a bit difficult to push the rest of it through. Get rid of that cap. So yeah, this is where I guess the challenge comes from. You want to be able to rest. Have we got enough space there? Yeah, just about. You can use a rubber mallet as well. Some people prefer that. And with the nylon one, it shouldn't really damage this. But if you use a metal hammer on a piece of aluminium, it's not going to end well. There we go. Once we've got it to about there we go. We are able to push the axle through. So there is your axle. Probably doesn't pick up too well, reflecting the light on the camera, but there is that. And then what you should be left with is your bearing that's inside there. Yeah, so what you should be left with is basically your axle and this singular bearing. I've actually skipped ahead there, because what I did was I took the axle and got this short bit, and I basically put it in from the disc end, and then when we hit that, it will take the other bearing out. So what we're going to do is pop that on there, grab a little end cap, and then grab a hammer, try and get that into shot. And there you have it. There's your hub totally emptied, and you've got your bearing on there which slides off, and then you've got your cap on there as well. Cap looks alright. So we're just going to move that out of the way, and then we're just going to run through what these bearings are for the hub. These are exactly the same sizes for the hub, so they use 2 of these, and the number is 6903RS. So it's S for sugar, 6903RS. So what they are is a bearing that's got a 30mm outside diameter. Inside is about 17, and the thickness is a 7. So we've got 30-17-7. So if you search 30-17-7 bearing, it should come up with a 6903. In terms of what bearings you want to get, that's totally up to you. I normally just buy enduro ones, but yeah, there's all different types: stainless steel, chrome steel, ceramic. You can kind of go crazy and buy really expensive ones, but I'm not going to discuss that. What we're going to look at now is the Freehub. Get your little hub and get that out of the way. So you've got your Freehub system, and you do have basically an inbuilt seal on here. So I don't know if this is a detachable seal. It doesn't look like it is. I think it's an inbuilt seal on this one. What we will do, and what I'd probably recommend, is you remove the paws, because they've used a lot of grease on this one. The paws actually get stuck, which is pretty bad if you're riding. So you've got to be careful about how much grease you want to use in systems like this. So we're just going to get a little screwdriver. There is tiny little springs basically that sit like that, and as you push there, the little spring pushes against the paw. So just be aware that that could fly out when you take this off. So we grab that. That's a little spring there, little tiny one. Just going to chuck that in the GT85 stuff. Try and get rid of some of the grease on it, along with one of the paws as well, and just do that for all 3 of them. I'm guessing they have 3 paws in them as standard. Here's your little 3rd one out. Stuck to my skin. Maybe I'll just leave that to soak in there, and hopefully that will clean it up. Where's another cloth? I just want to wipe this down. Yeah, I'm not too sure if this is a removable seal on here. Definitely like rubberized texture there, so I would imagine it could be replaceable. But it does look like it's machined onto the Freehub, so yeah, maybe you can remove the rubber part. But I don't want to go and butcher something if I don't have to. I think I'll just stick to the bearings on on this one. So yeah, you've basically got that bearing there and that one there, which I believe are the same sizes, but I will remove them. And there is a kind of sleeve inside, which is nice and loose. You can see there the sleeve moving. You need that to move in order to have any chance of getting behind the bearings in order to remove them. And what we're going to do is a similar thing to this. There we go. And we're going to get a punch as well. So fine, I'll just go and grab a punch. What I've gone and got is a little punch here. There we go. And what you want to do is, as you move that sleeve around, you're going to attack the bearing from different corners. You don't want to push it out from one corner because it might get stuck in there that way. And I will go and get a proper hammer this time, if I can find it. There we go. So yeah, First of all, just going to start at the back, give it a little tap, and then move the punch to the front. And I do believe that has pretty much almost come out, and you can see that it's come out a bit wonky, so we know that we want to hit it from this back bit on the next strike. There we go, so there's your first bearing out, and you have your little tube as well. Someone loved a bit of grease when they built this. I'm just going to chuck that into the GT85. And we have the final bearing, which is that going to sit nicely on there? Shouldn't be too bad. If you wanted to, you could actually use the axle again, because obviously the axle had to pass through this anyway. So you could use the axle and pop that on there, use a little end cap, and then whack the bearing out that way. It's not the best support, but it should be alright. We can zoom out a bit. Yeah, I'm kind of having a problem with these bits. Kind of get stuck inside of there. I don't really have another support that's going to work, do I? Let's have a look. No, not really, not for this one. It's a little bit awkward. This one's probably the best, even though it's sitting on a bit of the rubber, but it's nice and supported and it's not falling into it. And there we go, there's your second bearing. Which is quite strange because there's actually two of them. So yeah, don't really want to get those mixed up. Get that out of the way. Get the axle out of the way, we don't need that. And there is your Freehub, basically, without any bearings in there. So yeah, quite surprised about the double bearing. What we will do is clean them up and see if they're three of the same sizes, which would probably make sense. I'm going to keep them separate for now, just check them. So these ones are 6803. Yep, 6803. I'm guessing this one would definitely be completely different bearing, completely different like manufacturer. Yeah, 6803 on that one. Yeah, 6803. So they're all the same. It runs all three same bearings. What we're going to do now is, we've already installed that first bearing. When you install these bearings, you might just want to put your finger in there and just spin it and make sure that it spins nice and true and straight. If you spin it and it's kind of doing that as you turn it, it could mean that the bearing isn't sitting nice and straight in there and that it's at an angle, and that's why you're getting that kind of wibble wobble. But yeah, we have our little silver tube that drops in there. And we've got these two bearings that go on this side. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm just going to install one of them at a time. And you might notice I don't run any grease on the outside of the bearing. Yeah, I don't really want too much grease here because I think that it will just attract a load of dirt. If you want to kind of go online and do a little bit of research on that, and then you can choose if you want to put grease around bearings or down in these areas. It's up to you then, but it's not really something that I feel like I need to do. I need to zoom out a little bit. Yeah, make sure that's nice and straight on there. There we go, it should just slots in really nice. And we get to a point where you can feel it butt up, and I'm just going to leave it like that for now, because what we need to do is check the tube in the middle and make sure that that's still able to move left and right. Otherwise we're going to have a problem when you put your axle through your rear wheel. It's not going to be too happy. And as you can see, in there somewhere is the tube. You can see a little lip there. Yeah, it's a little bit, I'd probably want that a tiny bit tighter, so that's what I'm going to do. I'll probably just cut this part and then start it again when we are back doing the second bearing. Yeah, so now that you've got your bearing on the outside and one on the inside, we're just going to put this other one on. Just going to pop that on there and try not to let it go in or start wonky. Makes it a little bit difficult. You could probably just use a socket on there and hit it as long as you're on the metal and you're not hitting the blue part, like of the sill, because you will damage the sill. And if you kind of bend it or kink it, it will just mean any water or anything like that will get in there a lot easier, and potentially a lot of the grease will just come out as well, which will probably just ruin the longevity really of the bearing. Just thread this on. Yeah, it keeps kind of going in wonky. Tried this a few times now. Just the bearing going in one side more than the other. And it's very difficult to get it out, but yeah, I'm just going to slide that into there. And once again, we're basically just doing that, and it stopped. It doesn't really want to go any further. We're just going to go boom. Unscrew this. Noisy dog behind me. It makes some weird noises. But yeah, there you go. There is your kind of Freehub sorted. You might just want to check with that as well and make sure it's nice and flush. For me, I probably want to just tighten it a little bit, so I will do that. Just needs to be pushed in a tiny bit more. It's probably like 0.1 mil sticking out a little bit too far. So yeah, it's a lot nicer, sitting a lot nicer. We can still move the little bit in the middle. In terms of the system that it uses for the paws and the springs, you can probably see that this spring's got a little bit bent. It's not really a big issue, but I'm guessing most people are going to run them every other slot. So there is a little hole on the side, which you probably would have seen when you took it out. We're just going to pop that into that hole. Once again, I'm not really going to run any grease on the spring, because when it compresses it might just slow it kind of down on the kind of decompression. So if I can find a bit of grease, there we go. I'm just going to put it on the paws, just on this kind of, on this round edge. So basically on this bit here. Just trying to think if it's better in there or on this bit, but I'm just going to go. And I really don't like putting a lot on here, just because it will attract grease and things will just get stuck to it. Like we saw in the video when we took it apart, somebody had greased it quite a lot. So once it's kind of sitting like that, it sits on the spring. I'm just going to grab this little flat end and compress that spring out of the way. And there's your Freehub paw. So yeah, I'm going to do that on the other three. And like I said, I'll probably do 1, 2 and then 3. I don't think it really matters too much where they go, to be honest, but yeah, there's your Freehub back together. Yeah, so when it comes to the putting the Freehub back together, not the Freehub, the actual hub, you might want to roll this, make sure it's nice and true still, make sure it's not rolling weird, like if it's twisted or distorted, you'll probably see it moving around. This one's got a little bit of kind of discoloration, not really sure what you would call that, but it's some sort of effect on the metal. And the other thing as well is when it's slotted back together, basically the bearings butt up to these little bits here, like so, and that will just sit in the hub like that. So you just want to make sure that these little edges are nice and clean and there's no debris or any bird kind of edges, any bits of metal sticking up or anything like that. So when you get your hub, you're going to get your, here we go, going to get your Freehub end first, and that's where you're going to drop your bearing into there. And that's the first bearing that we're going to do, because it's a bit easier to do it that way around. So yeah, if we can get a bit better angle on that, something like that. So 6903 bearing. So just need to find the right drift now. There we go. So that's going to pop there. And then that one will basically just sit in there. I do think with the, I'm not too sure with the presses, but I think this end with the little washer is supposed to go at the bearing end, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So we drop that in there, pop that there, try and start off with it being nice and straight to begin with. And we'll sort it all out once the threads get a bit closer to each other, or the ends, the two levers get closer to each other. Look, make sure the bearing's going in nice and flat, nice and straight, not one end in more than the other. Have another little look around it. It's definitely a lot more resistance if you did do the Freehub first. There's a lot more resistance this way, or doing this bearing anyway. And it gets to a point there, if we undo that, and it doesn't really want to go anymore, so we're not going to force it. I did have a look at the kind of faces on the inside of these hubs, and they're not that great, to be honest with you. So yeah, I wouldn't really want to force them too much. I think you could probably end up denting them quite easily. If we can pick it up on camera, I'll show you what I mean. So yeah, there is how that looks when that is installed. And basically what you have is it is flush. So I'll just grab a little pair of scissors. I mean, there is a groove there, just because this edge here has kind of like a 45-degree edge on it. But the bearing isn't sticking up higher than this bit. So this outer edge of the bearing is basically the same height as this kind of silver bit that you see. And then it means you can get your axle, pop that through, and butt that up like so. And then it means you're only dealing with this much. For me, it doesn't matter too much, but it depends if you've got a long socket or not. So yeah, I've got these kind of things which are basically designed to go over and still be able to press the bearing in, even if it has to go in this way, which on this hub, luckily it doesn't. So we're just going to grab our other bearing, slot that into place like so. As you may have guessed, you can't use press because it's not going to go over this axle. So we're going to grab one of our little tools somewhere. We do have this little baby one, and this one's not got the right diameter, so we'll use the big one. So basically that's just going to go on there, and we're just going to tap that bearing in. There we go. That's going to sit on there like so, and you're just basically going to tap that bearing in. And you should hear a change in noise, like when you're hitting it. The other thing as well is don't just kind of go crazy. Like if you hit that really hard and you hit it on, say, one side, then your bearing is going to end up going in a bit wonky. You could potentially damage the bearing, get it stuck there. on some things, like headsets and stuff like that, if you do put bearings in wonky, you can end up cracking the frame and stuff, so it's pretty important to be nice and true when you're doing your hammer strikes. And if you want, you can just kind of run around with a hammer like that if you're not too confident with it. Just have a little check, and that's going down. The best shot for it. You should be able to hear that's changed noise. And me kind of grabbing it there. Every time I was hitting it with the hammer, I could feel this bit moving down a bit, so it's still moving. And there you go, there's your, once you've kind of got that together like so. But I did find with this hub as well, there is a little bit of movement, and then until you kind of put everything together, so you're going to grab your Freehub. Some people want to run a little bit of grease in there, it will make it a little bit more quiet. But I'm not sure massively what the grease is going to do, metal on metal, maybe that's why people do it, but I quite like the noise. So, and you can see we've still got that play there, but once we get the end caps on there and put them on, mine don't fit currently because I did take the rubber bits on the inside out to clean them up. Once we've got those end caps on there, it's quite weird, there's no, that's how it's going to sit in the bike, it's going to be compressed. And there's no play whatsoever. It's very strange, but that's how it works. And that's kind of how your Freehub's going to sound with less grease in there, I guess. So yeah, there you go. BontraNger rapid drive. I'm going to use it on my own bike, see how it goes.